All right, well, hi everybody. Welcome to this week's tutorial. So this week we are going to be working with some photograph images in Photoshop, and then we are going to end in Illustrator mixing those photographic images that we manipulate with some vector images that we have. So the first thing that you need to do is download the photo tutorial file for this week. You will find in there a photo of a car, a giraffe, grapes, a house, some sand, and there's also a Illustrator file in here with a couple of different graphics that I already have set into the file for you. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and open up the car photo in Photoshop. You can do this a couple of different ways. The first, I'm going to go ahead and launch this. The first is that you can control or right click on the photo and say open with Photoshop right here. Or as you open Photoshop, you can go to File, Open, and then navigate to your folder, which is most easily accessible on your desktop there. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Open. So the overall Photoshop interface, you're going to see here, and I have my mouse like really exaggerated, my pointer here, so that you can see what I'm doing. You're going to see that you have your tool layout over here on the left side, just like an Illustrator. You have many panels over here on the right side, just like an Illustrator, and of course you have complete control over all of those. I have my workspace set to the essentials. If your workspace looks different, you can go to Reset Essentials if you're not very familiar with Photoshop. And then that way our interface will both look the same. So up in the very top here, you have your selection or move tool. That is a tool that you probably use the most. Just like an Illustrator, you have those selection tools on the very, very top of the tool panel. You have the ability to edit your toolbar right here in this triple dot area if you like. For what we're doing today, we don't need to edit anything, but you've got your options there. So the very first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you the new remove tool in Photoshop. So make sure that your Photoshop is updated. And what we're going to be kind of focusing on today in terms of the photographs that we're manipulating and changing is different ways that we would need to know techniques to get these ready for, online distribution in terms of like a banner or an ad or, possibly for print, but also for social media or something like that. So we're going to do a couple of common things that you kind of run into with images and a few tips and tricks for image manipulation. All right, so let's say this is a car that I want to show as the prominent sort of subject matter in a in a photo, a post or whatever. The first thing that you see, obviously, is we've got this blurry person. So somebody maybe walked in front of the car before the photo was taken. Oh, what a bummer. We don't want that person in the photograph. So what we're going to do today is remove that. Now, Photoshop, just like Illustrator, if you hit Command or I think it's Window and your Window button, I'm blanking on what it's called. I'll have to look at my PC keyboard. But anyways, it's you can zoom in and out with your plus and minus keys with Command being held down. And you can also hold your space bar down. If you hold your space bar down, you're going to see that a hand comes up and you can click down and drag on that to move your photo around. So I'm going to zoom in really close so that you can see what I'm doing, but you don't have to zoom in this close at all. So here's the person that I want to remove here. We're going to go over to the toolbars and you're going to go down to something that looks like a Band-Aid. What you are going to have selected is most likely the Spot Healing Brush, which is a really great tool as well. It removes blemishes from the background of photographs, things like that. But we have a little bit bigger thing to remove with this blurry person in front of the car. So I'm going to click down on this tool, and you're going to see other types of tools. We are going to choose the Remove tool. So it's the Band-Aid with little sparkles on the side. All right, so you can see that we've got a lot of controls up here, plus and minus, different kinds of controls for the brush itself. Then you should see this little panel called Find Distractions. And this is really a nice, quick tool because a lot of times people are removing the same types of things from their photograph. So if you come down and you click on People, let's go ahead and click on People. It's going to say Remove People, and it should have fairly easily found this person here. Then all we need to do is if you just hit your Enter key or your Return key, it's going to take a minute to go ahead and remove that area, and it's going to generatively fill in what was missing here. Not exactly 100% perfect, but it looks pretty convincing. So if we back out, we now have a photograph of this car with the person removed. This isn't good for really highly detailed stuff. So you can see like the front of the car is a little bit, it's a little bit off. But let's go ahead and let's go to Find Distractions and let's look for wires and cables because I do see some wires up here. So let's go ahead and click on wires and cables and see what it comes up with. You can see it removed. It just found and removed that lower cable. We still have the upper cable here, but that's okay. So we don't have time to go over all the little nuances of this particular tool, but these healing tools in general are really good to know about in terms of fixing things on a photograph, removing things, healing areas. So definitely delve into that. I just wanted to brush over it so that you knew it was a thing. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we're going to save a copy of this photograph that's edited because you're going to turn it in at the end of the tutorial. So we're going to go to File. We're going to save a copy. I'm going to call this Car Final. And in my folder here for photo tutorial, I'm actually going to create a new folder. And I'm going to call it Final because I want to keep all my final images in one place so that it's nice and organized. So Car Final, we have a new folder called Final within the tutorial file, and we're going to do it in the format of a JPEG. So go ahead and hit Save. You're going to get a window pop up with JPEG options. Go ahead and hit OK. All right, cool. So we're done with that. It's going to ask you if you want to save this image, and it is wanting to save it as a Photoshop file. You don't need to save it. And the other thing I was going to say too is if your car didn't quite come out perfect, don't worry about that. Just save your file however it came out and we'll move on. This is again more about you knowing about these things than them working perfectly in the tutorial. The next thing that we're going to open is the house file. So go ahead and navigate to File, Open, and we've got this house image. So we're going to do a couple of different things here. The first one is that this is in a square ratio, and I would really like this to be more of a rectangle in a landscape style photograph. So another really powerful tool in Photoshop is the generative fill, extending photographs beyond what the actual photograph is. And this has been around for a while, but I think with all of the new AI generative tools, it's become a lot stronger. So what we're going to do with this photograph is we're going to kind of go against what might feel like inherent, and we're going to actually go to the crop tool. Normally you would think, well, why would I choose the crop tool? I'm not wanting to crop this, I want to extend it. Well, we can use the crop tool to extend that background. Now, when you click on the crop tool, most likely your frame is framing around this square, or yours is like mine, where it's a particular size. All that means is that your ratio up here is maybe previously set from opening Photoshop before. All you need to do is hit clear up here. And then you can go to original ratio, and that should fix that for you. So you should have a toolbar down here that is popping up, and it will, when you choose that crop tool, it'll have generative expand already here for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull, oh, wait a minute. Command or Control Z. Maybe it's not original ratio that I want. It's just regular ratio at the very top, which let's try that. So just have not original ratio, apologies, go to ratio at the very top. All right, so let me come back over to this crop tool, and we're going to pull this to the side like so. And then what I want to do is click generative expand. So go ahead and click on that. What would you like to generate? I don't have anything in particular. It says if I leave it blank, it'll just generate based on the photograph. So let's just go ahead and let it do its thing and see what options it comes up with. This might take a minute, and if it does, that's fine. Okay, so what you are going to see here is that we have a couple of different options. So I can kind of click through those and see which one I like. And I think the first one is the most convincing, so that's the one that I'm going to go with. Okay, and what you can see here is that it actually added another layer, and the generative imagery is actually right here. So if I were to shut visibility off of my base layer, you can see what was generative fill and what wasn't. Okay, so what I want to do now is I actually want to go ahead and flatten this image down so that it's all on one layer, because I want to make some basic photograph adjustments in terms of what's going on with the color. I want this to be a little bit more saturated and a little bit exaggerated. So over here in my layers panel, you are going to see obviously your background layer, your base layer that we started with, and then the generative expand layer. Hover over the words generative expand, and I want you to control or right click, and there's an option here called flatten image. So we're going to go ahead and just choose that, and you're going to see that the photograph is all flattened into one. I suppose another thing that I could have done was create something that's called an adjustment layer, but I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible today because we have a lot to cover. So the other thing you're going to see on this background layer is there's a little lock at the end, and you can just remove it by clicking on it. It doesn't really matter too much. There's reasons to lock layers that we won't get into today, but it's similar to like if you lock a layer in Illustrator. So I'm just zooming in super close so that everybody can see this really well. So I want to go up to my top menu, and I'm going to go to Image and Adjustments. And I just want you to be aware of some of these adjustments that you have in Photoshop. So the first one actually that I want to point out is the Auto Tone, Contrast, and Color. These are great filters that you can just run on any photo, and it's going to do a little bit of auto correction, and they're not always the best option. You can definitely like undo it if you don't like. Sometimes I have a hard time with the auto color, like it doesn't quite get color right. It did fine for this, but anyways, these auto adjustments are quick ways to just hurry up and do some corrections with tone and contrast, and then for the most part, color does a pretty good job. But you have more advanced options here in this adjustments flyout here. And so you can play around with a lot of these. For this one, I am going to go to color balance because I want to pop out some of the blues and greens a little bit more. So when you choose color balance, you're going to see this menu pop up, and I'm just going to go ahead and make a few adjustments here, and you can see how you can make the color a little bit exaggerated. This is kind of more of a bleach out look. I'm going to bring this more towards the blue. I'm going to bring this more towards the green. And we're going to pop this over more towards the blue. And I'm going to hit OK. Now, that was a destructive edit on my photograph. So that means that it was kind of a permanent edit. And usually that's not ideal. It just depends on what you're doing. But what you can do is you can go to Layer, New, and let's see here. You can go to New Adjustment Layer, and you are going to see that you can create a new layer based on one of these. So let's say I want to do a new adjustment layer on Vibrance. You're going to see a new layer dialog box pop up. Just hit OK. And so what we're going to see here is that we have a new layer, and this is undestructive, so I can shut this off at any time. So if I come over here to the adjustment layer, okay, so I'm going to see that when I click on this little icon here, that I have in my properties panel, I have the vibrance options. And I can make adjustments there. So I'm going to make it really exaggerated and really saturated. And then if I come down here, I can see that my bottom layer is my photograph that I destructively edited earlier. And then I have this layer, which is non-destructive. So the adjustment layers are probably definitely the way to go if you don't want to destroy the original pixels of your photograph. Okay, so enough about that. There's so much more that can be done with that, but I just wanted to show you those few things, how to get rid of people and maybe wires in a background, distracting images, and then how to extend a photograph with generative fill. So just like the other one, we're going to go to File, we're going to go to save a copy. And I'm going to call this house final. I'm going to save this in my final folder in the format of a JPEG. I'm going to hit save. Okay. Now, if you wanted to save this as a PSD file, a Photoshop file, because you wanted to open this back up and edit it in Photoshop with your layer options here, then what you could do is you can do to save as or save a copy. It doesn't really matter. Let's go save as. House, PSD is fine. Format, Photoshop. And I'm going to just save it in my regular folder here. It's not one of my final images. So I'm going to go, you can save it like that if you like. You're going to get format options. Just go ahead and hit OK. And then you have this as a project file that you could open up later and continue to work on if you wanted to. All right, so let's go ahead and close that. At this point, we are going to go ahead and, take a break if you like. This is a bit of a long tutorial this week, so definitely take a moment, and we're going to come back and do some more image manipulation, working with transparencies. And then, of course, after that, we are going to jump into Illustrator. So, yep, I will see you in the next video.